Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Elevenses. My name is Martina Vincenzi, and I am the founder of the VIP Flight Attendant Academy Private Jet Coach. And today with us, I have the great pleasure to welcome Gareth Dore. Gareth, welcome to Elevenses.
Oh, thank you very much. Good to see you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I have a few questions for you, Gareth. Starting from the standpoint that you are a pilot, you are English, but you live in America, and you fly for an American operator of private jets. So I would like to start with the very first question, which is, can you tell us about your career life? What happened in your life until now?
Sure. Yeah, well, it's quite a long and varied journey to being where I am today. But when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a pilot. I think there's those that always wanted to be a pilot and those that grow into it. But for me, it was always there. And I just had 1 hour of flying when I was 16, but I knew it's something I really wanted to do. I went to university, and after that, I applied to the Royal Air Force in the UK. And I was very fortunate to be accepted for that because although the Royal Air Force is very historic and prestigious, they don't accept that many pilots. So I was able to join the Royal Air Force, went through officer training, and then I did, you start on planes. So I started on small planes, and then I got sent to helicopters. And that was really interesting. So within just a few hours, you're flying solo in a helicopter at low level around England, and very challenging, but did that. And then I was sent to fly search and rescue helicopters. So that was most of my career, was flying search and rescue around England, Wales, Scotland, and also down in the Falkland Islands in the Southern Hemisphere. And that was a really varied job. So it was rescuing people in the mountains or on the coastline at sea. We did firefighting with water buckets, landing on ships, and just a really varied, interesting flying. And I did that until the last few years of my career. I was in the Air Force for 17 years, and I was promoted, and I did a couple of office jobs essentially. So one was working with the Army and advising the Army on how we use the Royal Air Force essentially. And my last tour was working at the Defence Academy, which is like a university for the armed forces, where I was instructing other officers on communication skills and air power and various things like that. And then when I left the Royal Air Force, I really wanted to have a new challenge and a change. So during my last few years in the Air Force, I did my own qualifications to fly civilian and to fly planes instead. So I did my commercial pilot's license for my European license. And then my first job was with a low-cost carrier flying from the UK. And I did that for a few years, flying the Airbus. And that was a really interesting experience. So I went from a helicopter that carried around 19 people maximum to an Airbus with 230 people. So from helicopters to civilian planes. So it's really interesting. And going from rescues to something that's very commercially minded, it was a really interesting change. And also from flying, low level and quite close to going to Russia and Israel and Iceland, and a really interesting change in my career. Did that for a few years, and then for personal reasons, I had to move to USA. And with that, I had to change my license again. So that involved going from my European license to an American license. So I had to do a few more exams and a bit more flying and simulator tests and medicals to get my American license. And I was advised by a captain at the airline I was with. He said, I think private aviation would be really good for you. And he recommended the operation I'm with now. And I think he was right. I think it's a really good fit for me. So I joined my current operation just coming up to 4 years ago. And it's been a really good fit. So I started on the freighter as a first officer. And then after about a year, I was a captain on here they call it the Phenom. So in the UK, it's the Phenom, of different pronunciation. And then very quickly, I was invited onto a team flying the Gulfstream 650. So for about 2.5 years now, I've been a captain on the Gulfstream 650, and that is worldwide operations. So it's a really interesting variety. and just really enjoying what I do now.
What kind of destination do you do?
Well, it's interesting because although it can fly worldwide, I would say the majority is still USA, Canada, Mexico. So it's a lot of the routes that private aviation in America does. So it's things like the Northeast, like the financial centers like New York and Boston, Florida, Denver, Colorado, and the Rockies, LA in California, Seattle in the Northwest, a bit of Hawaii, the Caribbean, and then sometimes into Toronto, Canada, and a bit into Mexico, like Cabo. But maybe once or twice a month we'll fly internationally, and that could be something like London or Paris, South America, into Argentina, Chile. We've had a few flights to the Galapagos recently, Galapagos Islands. But really, it's wherever the owner or the client wants to go from A to B, and it could be anywhere in the world. So that's the interesting thing about what we do, is one day I'm in Chicago here. It could be Chicago O'Hare, which is the busiest airport in the world for movements. And where we might go might be a runway with no other aircraft, no air traffic control, and just a completely different kind of environment. So it's really interesting, the kind of variety, and also where we fly. You know, one day we're here speaking English, and then suddenly you're in South America and everyone on the radio is speaking Spanish. So it's really interesting, the variety of what we do.
It certainly keeps you active. It keeps you stimulated.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a part of what I enjoy. I understand there's very, different kinds of flying, and, airlines, it suits some people, but I think there's many reasons that private aviation suits me. And I do find it quite, as you say, quite stimulating and interesting and challenging, that we have to use this knowledge and apply it each day, and things are different. And it's, every day is a different airport and different people, and we have to be quite dynamic and flexible. And I find it quite enjoyable. And also the languages, I quite enjoy, the opportunity to speak some Spanish when we're in South America, or when we're flying across Europe, all the different languages on air traffic control. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's true. I think me and you, we are similar from this point of view. I also feel the same when I used to fly airline about 10, 11 years ago. It's always the same. It's like, you're just doing every day the same. And in business aviation, you are definitely more stimulated. And I would say we become a sort of experts of the problem solving.
Yeah.
So and anything that comes up, which is quite a lot sometimes, we just become very creative in finding a solution that works, or an attempt at least.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, I think that's the big difference from, of course, in the military aviation, there's a lot of problem solving, especially in search and rescue, and airline is quite structured, and the role of pilot is very much fly the plane, and a lot of the work is done for you. But as you know, the way we work in private aviation, we're doing a lot more of the operation. So I'm involved in, 1 minute I'm dealing with perhaps, an aircraft maintenance issue, but the next minute I'm using the vacuum and cleaning the carpet, or I'm cleaning the tables, or I'm helping get food ready. And then, so you're involved in much more parts of the operation, and also problem solving, because there's so much more we're doing that there's likely to be something that doesn't quite work out, and we try to smooth it out and make it as positive experience for our owners as we can. So I enjoy that.
And regarding the difference of the operation between America and Europe, I know you have not really quite flown private aviation in Europe. However, of course, flying in Europe, you still have a kind of a glimpse of what's going on in this the side of the Atlantic. So what do you think is the difference in terms of business aviation in America compared to Europe?
Sure. I think one major difference is just how prevalent it is, because in USA, I believe it's about 60% of private jets in the whole world are in USA. But USA is only about 4 or 5% of the world's population. So it's like a massive overrepresentation of the whole sector is here in USA. So, if you're in Europe, in many cities, there might be 1 or 2 private jets at an airport. But if you're in something like Miami, Opa-locka or Teterboro in America, there are maybe 200 aircraft, just hundreds of private jets. It's just the scale of private aviation here is, massive. And it's just due to, the different, it's the world's biggest economy, and it's a huge country. And I think that's really a big difference here, just how much private aviation there is. Whereas in Europe, it's something a bit more rare. Whereas here, it's quite a lot more common, and there's a lot more people that have the means to be able to use private aviation. So there's more opportunities for people like me to be able to fly private aviation. So it gives us the opportunity. It's not just airlines or the military. There's this huge sector which is a bit smaller in Europe, but there's a lot more opportunity here in USA. And also just the infrastructure is set up for private aviation because every town has an airport. It's not like Europe where there's lots of towns and there's an airport here and there. Every town has an airport, so it's just part of the infrastructure aviation. So it's quite different, I would say, from Europe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I have the same feeling. I did fly in America a few times, and it's just the general feeling. They are just used to you. They know what you're doing. They know already what you need. So it's more structured for business aviation.
Yeah, and I think part of that as well is not just the infrastructure, but also the system. So, for example, if you're in Europe, it's very structured. So the timings for air traffic, the slot times, it might be quite fixed. So if you're trying to leave Nice, they might say you leave at 2:30. And if you miss it, this, if you miss it, then you have to wait for a new time. And it might be 3 hours. Yeah. It might be hours away. Whereas in America, it's much more flexible. So we do have this, but it doesn't happen very often. And normally there's quite a lot of flexibility with it. So that's probably a difference as well, is that here there's more flexibility. So the people we fly, they might arrive 15 minutes early or 30 minutes late. It's kind of quite a rough time. But I think if that happened in Europe, they would probably miss a lot of their flights because air traffic doesn't work like that, where it's much more flexible in USA because it's one country. It's a huge area, but it's one country and one system, and it's quite flexible. Whereas Europe obviously is quite different with Eurocontrol and all the different countries and the coordination required. So I think that probably changes the experience for the owners quite a bit.
Probably. And you just remind me on a situation that happened when I was flying an American aircraft, and I was, I think, Austin, in Texas. And, we arrived at the airport. So normally approximately 2 hours or 1 hour and a half before takeoff. And our aircraft was parked in another part of the apron. So the ground staff needed to take it to us. And we just sat there waiting and waiting and waiting. And then we arrived, it was 40 minutes to take off, more or less. And I said to the captain, it's 40 minutes to take off. Shouldn't we ask somebody going on? But he was super relaxed. No worries. They're working on it. And nevertheless, we finally got the aircraft, taken to us, and then we finally could access and go on board. And we departed on time, and probably, something like you just described about the slot, and then we got assigned a new one in a short period of time. So at the end, we ended up not doing almost no delay at all, but way more relaxed in.
Yeah, exactly.
In Nice, when it's peak season. No, it's not going to work like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that might be a difference. Although, when I go to Europe, it's just kind of in and out. I don't have the experience that you have, but I think that might be different. So it's a bit more relaxed here because there's a bit less constraint.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about peak seasons and low season, when would you define is the peak season in America for private aviation?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I didn't really know this before moving to America, and it's something I've learned during my job here, because obviously being European like you, I don't know how it is for Italians, but someone, from England, we have our summer holidays, which is kind of June, July, August, And we, as English people, we try to find somewhere that's, sunny and nice, like France or Spain or Portugal. And that's kind of that's the main holiday of the year for most families. But in America, I wasn't really aware of this, but the peak season is Thanksgiving through to New Year. So it's the end of November through to the start of January. Um, and there's a lot of reasons, but it's things like travel. So people will travel home from college or work. So they're going home for Thanksgiving, going home for Christmas. And there's a short time between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, for example, my son's in college. So he flew home for Thanksgiving, went back to college, and the next week he's back for Christmas again. So there's just a huge amount of travel because of these two holidays that are very close together. So that's a big part of it. But also, I'm here in Chicago, and it's a beautiful day today, but the winter is terrible. It's really hard, as you know.
I've been to Chicago in winter. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're in New York or anywhere in the kind of the northern half of America during winter, it's very hard. Just due to the geography, you can, in winter, in November, December, you can go down to the Caribbean, to Florida, the Keys, and it's, beautiful. It's going to be, 25, 27 degrees every day, and it's like a summer holiday. So we have this phenomenon in America. I don't know if you've heard, there's a term called the snowbirds. So it's people who live in the north, and in the winter they migrate to the south and they go to Florida and the Caribbean. So there's a lot of travel, because I think in Europe you can't really do this. Like you can go to the Canary Islands maybe, or maybe Egypt, but it's not amazing. It's going to be quite warm, but we just don't have the geography in Europe where you can travel and find somewhere that's beautiful weather. Whereas in America you can. There are places where around the year you can go, and why not go when the weather's terrible and it's icy, and you can take a break from clearing the snow from the driveway, and you can be on a beach in Turks and Caicos or the Bahamas, somewhere in the Bahamas or the Caribbean or Florida, where the weather's nice all the year. So I think it's part of that. It's partly those holidays where people are just traveling back and forth so much, like my son, as well as just the opportunity to take a break from the winter and go somewhere that's really nice. So that's our peak season. It's also quite busy this time of year. So spring into summer is a nice time of year for travel. So people go to Europe. So I have trips. I think my next trip might be to Paris in a few weeks. So people exploring Europe. And as well, there's a bit of domestic kind of holidays as well. So places like the Hamptons, I've been to quite a bit recently, as well as the islands around Cape Cod. So places like Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So these are places where typically quite wealthy people will have second homes, or they will vacation. Yeah. And that's this kind of time of year.
Although I have a confession to make.
Yeah.
My dream destination is Alaska in wintertime.
Oh, wow.
Everybody is capable of going, in Alaska in summertime. Well, thank you very much. I want to know how the people manage to live there in such a, cold weather and hard conditions in the peak of winter. Like I always been interested as well, for example, Siberia. But I've done Siberia, I've seen it, so I know how they deal with that.
Yeah.
It would be very interesting to see Alaska in winter. So yeah. I guess I'm a little bit unusual, but I do love sun and beach as well, obviously.
Oh yeah. Have you been to Alaska yet at all?
No, never.
Yeah, well, it's very beautiful. We go there sometimes because if we fly to Asia, it's a very long trip, and we need to take a break for the crew or for fuel. So Anchorage is somewhere we'll stop quite often. So I've been there a few times, and I've been there in winter. It is really beautiful, and I think so. One of my dreams there, and this is kind of with flying again, is the world's biggest seaplane airport is right next to the airport, the main airport in Anchorage. So on a nice day, there's seaplanes taking off and landing all day long, and they take off from a lake that's right next to the airport, and they fly through the mountains and then come back and land on the water again, and it looks just so beautiful. So that's something that appeals to me about Alaska, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds actually very nice. I do a research about that.
Oh yeah, that sounds quite interesting to me.
Next question. What do you think is the most important skill to succeed in this industry?
So I think, as I kind of mentioned before, it's being able to see the big picture and being able to manage many different aspects at once and enjoy it. Because if you just want to fly, it's not the right job for you. You need to be in an airline where you get in, you lock the door, and the route's given to you. And for many airlines in America, like all the performance figures are done for you. So you literally just fly the plane, you land and you get out. Whereas, for our operation, as I said, we're doing everything. We're talking, we're briefing our owners, we're loading the bags, we're dealing with, water service, personnel on the ground, just all aspects of the operation. And I really enjoy that. We're very autonomous. So I have an app on the phone and it tells us the details of each flight, but otherwise we don't communicate with the operations of our company. We just do it. We can just fly for a week and you just have your plane, you do the job, but we're dealing with all these different aspects. And as you said, problem solving and just doing your best to make it safe and make it efficient and make it a pleasant experience for the people that are flying, and hopefully working together well as a crew so that when these things don't go quite right, because that's going to happen every day because there's so many moving parts, that there's always going to be food that doesn't arrive or people are late or, problems with air traffic or whatever. Just try and deal with each problem as best we can and just keep an eye on the big picture so that we achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is a positive experience for our owners and that it's all done in a safe way. So I would say that's the main skill, I think, is just that the big picture and being able to bring it all together and work together as a team to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's something that unfortunately it comes with time. It's not like a skill that you can switch on from day one.
Oh yeah, and I found that, going from the airline to this, because as I said, you just fly the plane and then with the airline, you would typically hand over to another crew and you just walk straight off. So you just go in, fly, get out again. And sometimes you never even see the passenger. Like I'd go in, if you're going to start the plane, you close the door and when you get off, the passenger's gone. You didn't see anybody. So there's no interaction. So it's a very different experience. But I remember the first week or two where, you've been busy flying and there's a lot to think about. And then I'm like cleaning the tables and cleaning the back of the aircraft. And the guy instructing me is saying, that's not good enough. You missed this bit of cleaning. I'm thinking, is this the right job for me? Now I'm like, you become a pilot and you see Top Gun and like these images of being a pilot and now you're like vacuuming clean. You're like, what am I, it's quite different from being like a search and rescue pilot. And but actually it's just, you kind of take pride in you're doing everything. You're part of the whole operation. And you just enjoy that there's just many different aspects to the job. I think that's what it's about. And that's how you know if private aviation is for you. And if it's not, then maybe airlines for you, where you just fly the plane. You're like, actually, that's not for me. I just want to fly the plane. So, each person has their own path.
Yeah, that's true. And have you got a memorable story that you would like to share with us?
Well, I mean, there's many from all my flying, but my memory is not that good. So just one from recently is I think it's one that kind of like is a good example of everything we've been talking about, which is quite recently I was flying from Miami up to Teterboro in New York. So as I said, they're two very common airports we fly to, and a very common route between the two. Mm-hmm. And the weather this year, it's been like really strong winds and very turbulent just generally. But we were arriving in New York the wind was outside our limits. So to land at Teterboro, the crosswind was going to be 30 knots, which is beyond our limit to land. So we diverted to White Plains, New York. So we let the owners know, and we obviously communicated with the company so the company can start doing their job. So as I said, although we do everything ourselves, generally the company are there, the operations, and they will really help us. So this is where they can start letting the airport we're diverting to know we're on our way. They will start trying to arrange transportation for our owners. and we can concentrate on getting the aircraft safely on the ground. So, we worked really well as a crew. Even it was, still difficult to land at White Plains, New York with the wind, but we managed to land, and, kind of all came together where it wasn't the original plans. Of course, we diverted, but for our owners, they were just trying to get to Manhattan. So even though we were in a different part of New York, we managed to get them ground transportation. So they probably arrived where they were going at the same time, despite landing in a different place. But, it was a good example of where, as a crew, we were working together. The company was supporting us and we're flexible, and we just try and achieve what the owners are trying to achieve, essentially.
I remember a funny story that happened to me that you just brought up into my memory, that we were in the French Alps, and we were in an airport on the jet, getting everything ready for our flight, and then eventually we got to know that our customer was waiting for us into another airport.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, well, I mean, close by still, it was like an hour and a half by car from
Oh, wow.
places. Yeah. So we just had, we said, well, we can't really come to you because this other airport was for some reason not an option. So eventually it was him who had to come to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, not super happy about it, but this is where sometimes the machine doesn't really work properly, with this miscommunication or confusion. But I mean, it can happen because there are many airports close to one another. Maybe the name is similar, or you just got confused, and it's just thing that can happen. But anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah,
part of the job.
That's funny. That's a fear of mine. I sometimes worry because I'm always on airlines with my job, always like catching an airline to where the plane is and coming home. And sometimes I think, because I'm so confident with flying and it's just such a part of my life, am I just going to make a mistake one day where I arrive and I'm at the wrong airport, and it's going to be so embarrassing? I'm a pilot and I'm just in the wrong airport. Oh my gosh, I thought I was from JFK, but it's Newark, and it's going to be so embarrassing. Like I can imagine it could happen because it's just such a usual thing, and we travel so much, and it could happen to you. It was, and you have to ring operations. Yeah, I've missed my flight. I went to the wrong airport. So I try and keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I do the same. As well as when I have to leave, double checking thousands of times, in particular if I am in a different time zone. Oh my God, did I calculate the time correctly? Am I switched on with the correct time zone? So otherwise, just show up maybe 2 hours later or whatever it is. So
yeah, exactly. And particularly with America, where we've got 4 time zones within the US, and then more with Alaska, Hawaii, Aleutian Islands. It's a huge country, so it'd be so easy to miss something. So I try and think about that so I'm not embarrassed.
Well, thank you very much, Gareth. It was a pleasure learning about your experience and your thoughts, and your opinion about business aviation has been a very interesting journey with you as well. So thank you very much for participating at Elevenses, the podcast that unveils the secrets and the dynamics of business aviation. And I'll see you to the next episode. Baci baci.